The acid rain bounced off Sergeant Maya Brick Rodriguez's helmet with a cheerful patter that reminded her of camping in the Pacific Northwest. She adjusted her pack and took another swig from her water bottle, completely oblivious to the horrified chittering coming from the alien observation team trailing behind her. Human Brick, wheezed ZXT Hack, the lead xenobiologist from the Galactic Survey Council, his translator struggling with the respiratory distress in his voice. The atmospheric corrosives are at 0.7 molarity. Your equipment should be dissolving. Brick glanced down at her standard issue gear, the same stuff she'd worn through 3 tours on Europa's ice storms and that delightful vacation to Venus's upper atmosphere. A few scorch marks, sure, but nothing a little duct tape couldn't handle. This old thing. I've had worse from my ex-wife's cooking. The 6-legged ZXT Hack's carapace went from blue to a sickly yellow-green. Behind him, the ethereal Vorthack delegation floated in their environmental suits, their tentacles writhing in what she'd learned was their species' version of panic. Perhaps, gurgled Vorthack Prime through their suit speakers, we should reconsider this expedition. The gravitational fluctuations alone. A tremor ran through the ground, shifting from 1.2 G to 0.8 G in the span of a heartbeat. The aliens scrambled for stability while Brick simply adjusted her stride, having spent her childhood on the earthquake-prone California coast. Fluctuations. She hopped experimentally as the gravity dipped to 0.6 G. This is like walking on the moon. Want to see something cool? She launched herself 15 feet into the air, did a lazy backflip, and landed with a soft thud as the gravity snapped back to 1.4 G. The Vorthack Prime's translation matrix sparked and went silent. How, ZXT Hack's voice cracked, how are you not dead? Brick shrugged, pulling out a protein bar that had been manufactured on Earth, where they tested food preservation against everything from nuclear radiation to black hole tidal forces. Dunno. Good genes. My grandmother always said the Rodriguez family was too stubborn to die. They crested a ridge, and the valley below opened up before them. The alien team's collective gasp was audible even through their various breathing apparatus. The landscape writhed with bioluminescent predators, their scales glowing toxic greens and purples. Massive, serrated plants snapped at anything that moved. The air itself seemed to shimmer with aggressive microorganisms. Sweet, Brick said, pulling out her binoculars. Look at the size of those things. What did you call them again? Kethmori Deathstalkers, ZXT Hack whispered. Apex Predators. Bulletproof hide, acid saliva, pack hunters with intelligence approaching sentience. The expedition that discovered this world lost 3 ships to just one of them. Ha! Brick lowered her binoculars. They look like a cross between a rhino and a crocodile. We had those on Earth too, except ours were bigger and meaner. Called them Congress. The joke was lost on the aliens, who were too busy scanning their instruments in growing terror. Radiation levels are spiking, chittered ZXT Hack. The stellar activity is increasing geometric resonance in the planet's core. We need to evacuate immediately. What's the rush? Brick was already picking her way down the slope, hopping between acid pools like a kid playing hopscotch. We haven't even reached the good stuff yet. The artifact's still another 2 clicks northeast. The good stuff turned out to be a grove of trees that actively tried to impale anything that came near them. Brick ducked under a particularly aggressive branch and patted its trunk. Easy there, buddy. We're just passing through. The tree, apparently not used to being treated like a slightly excitable golden retriever, froze in confusion. Impossible, breathed Vorthack Prime, who had managed to reboot their translator. The thorn willows have never shown non-aggressive behavior. They're programmed by evolution to attack anything with a central nervous system. Maybe they just needed someone to talk to them nicely. Brick scratched the bark, and the tree actually seemed to lean into her touch. Back home, we had rose bushes that'd tear you apart if you weren't careful. But treat 'em right, and they'd bloom for you. The ground ahead opened into a cavern system that glowed with the bioluminescent signatures of the planet's most dangerous inhabitants. Brick switched on her headlamp and started forward. Human Brick. ZXT-Hack's voice went up an octave. Our readings indicate at least 47 Kethmori Death Stalkers in those tunnels. Adult breeding pairs with territorial instincts. 47. Brick grinned, the expression visible even through her helmet's faceplate. That's it. Hell, I've faced worse odds at a Detroit Lions tailgate party. The first Death Stalker came around the corner like a freight train made of teeth and bad intentions. It stood 8 feet tall at the shoulder, its hide rippling with muscle and bioelectric energy. Its roar shook stalactites from the ceiling. The alien screamed. Brick cracked her knuckles. "Oh, you're a big boy, aren't you?" She stepped forward, not back, and the creature paused, apparently as confused as the tree had been. In its evolutionary history, nothing had ever moved toward it. "Come on then, let's dance." The Death Stalker lunged, jaws open wide enough to swallow a small aircraft. Brick sidestepped with the fluid grace of someone who'd learned to dodge flying debris during hurricane season in Florida, grabbed the creature's lower jaw, and used its own momentum to slam it face first into the cavern wall. "Rule number 1, she said, dusting off her hands as the stunned predator slumped to the ground, never commit to a charge unless you're sure you can handle the consequences. The pack of Death Stalkers that had been converging on their position suddenly developed a collective case of stage fright. Rule number 2, Brick continued, stepping over the unconscious alpha, size doesn't matter if you've got no technique. I learned that from my little sister. By the time they reached the artifact, a crystalline structure that hummed with enough energy to power a small city, the local wildlife had decided that the strange bipedal visitor was either a deity or someone's really terrifying pet. Either way, they kept their distance. Fascinating, Vorthak Prime whispered, their sensors dancing over the crystal. The harmonic resonance suggests this could revolutionize our understanding of quantum mechanics. Cool, Brick said, hefting the artifact under one arm like a bag of groceries. Can we grab some lunch on the way back? All this hiking's worked up an appetite. The return journey took half the time, mostly because word had spread through the ecosystem that the human was not to be trifled with. The acid rain had intensified, the gravity fluctuations had gotten worse, and a new species of flying predator had shown up to investigate the commotion. Brick waved at them cheerfully. Pretty birds. Back at the landing site, as the alien team huddled in their shuttle and ran decontamination protocols, ZXT-Hack approached Brick with something approaching religious awe. Human Brick, he said carefully, I must ask, what classification would you give to your home world? If this is a Class 5 Deathworld, surely Earth must be at least Class 3. Brick pulled off her helmet and shook out her hair, then reached into her pack for a thermos of coffee, actual Earth coffee, which she'd learned was considered a mild hallucinogen by most species. She took a long sip and smiled. Oh, Earth. She gestured vaguely at the hostile landscape around them. We'd probably classify this as a Class 2, maybe Class 3 on a bad day. Earth's what we call a Tier 0 ultra-deathworld. We've got hurricanes that could flatten this whole continent, predators that make your Death Stalkers look like house cats, and weather systems that could sterilize a planet. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then how, Vorthak Prime's voice was barely a whisper, how did your species survive evolution? Brick took another sip of coffee and watched the twin suns set over the alien landscape, painting the sky in shades of violence and beauty. Somewhere in the distance, a Death Stalker roared, probably telling its kids about the scary bipedal thing that had shown it what real apex predator behavior looked like. Hell if I know, she said finally. But I'll tell you what, you should see Monday mornings in rush hour traffic. Makes this place look like a day spa. As the shuttle lifted off, carrying the priceless artifact and 3 species worth of traumatized xenobiologists, the Galactic Survey Council quietly updated their files. Earth was reclassified as a Tier 0 ultra-deathworld, with a special notation, inhabitants appear to consider hostile environments a form of recreational activity. Recommend extreme caution when inviting to diplomatic functions. And somewhere in the personnel files, a new entry appeared, Sergeant Maya, Brick Rodriguez, available for consultation on worlds previously considered uninhabitable. Rates negotiable. Bring coffee.